I wanted to start off today actually with a little quick overview of things that I would have done last week, and I was hoping people that were returning helped explain. The person that was here played a YouTube video thing with me talking, right? Okay. I did that morning, and I couldn't quite remember if I'd done it for this class or I got to. But I want to take a little time to point out a few things. Actually, the day before, on Monday last week, I did come in on Monday and Wednesday for my AP1 classes because none of the people in there knew what was going on. So I wanted to sit down with them. And in the Monday class that I came in for, students were asking questions and actually got me to say things in a way that I hadn't quite before. I've laid it out the way that I did. And I put that in the YouTube thing that I showed you that had what to do before the class, what to do after the class. I just want to spend a little bit of time kind of pointing that out a little bit more. So this week we're on the autonomic system, and there's something weird with this projector. Can't quite see things that well. So down the left-hand side of this green and blackboard are all the topics, just moving week to week through the semester. So last week was the sensory system, this week's the autonomic system, and this is not a good sign. Well, at least we can see where the dark black writing is. 17 well, can't see all that detail. But before coming in on any given week, what you should have done before coming in today was to go through the reading for the chapter. They switched to the way that they put chapter numbers in the book, and so I'm having a little time of adjusting to make sure the chapter numbers make sense to me. But anyways, you go through the chapter reading. At the end of each of the sections in the reading is a section called the concept coach, which is comprehension questions, review questions, whatever I'm going to say for that section. They've always been there in the book, so those of you that have me before using this book before, just at the end of each chapter or each section, there were like 4 or 5 multiple choice questions. Those questions in the book have just been incorporated into this concept coach thing. And they're meant for you to pause and reflect on what you've read, sort of for practice questions or, again, comprehension. For those concept coach questions, that assignment, it's a pilot program through OpenStax. It's something that they're adding to the books, and I'm trying it out. There may be some point later in the semester where they have a questionnaire that I want all of the students to fill out so they can get some feedback from students as they're using it. I don't know exactly what to expect from the pilot program, but I did something like this before through a different service, which kind of no longer exists, but it was those questions from the end of each section that students could go in and do. So I'm treating it as far as an assignment within the class the same way, which is you're not getting a score for completing that based on how you do with those questions. It's just a matter of completing them in a timely manner. So if you do the concept coach questions on time, meaning before class, then you'll get 2 points for having done them for that chapter. If you do them but late after the time that they're due, then you get 1 point. If you never do them, then you get 0 points for that. There are, I think, well, let me think here. 8, 9, 10. Okay, yeah, there's 12 different things. There's actually 11 chapters that we're dealing with, but one chapter is split over 2 weeks, and so the concept coach for the first part of that chapter will be the one for that, and the concept coaches for the rest of that chapter, the second week will be a separate assignment. So there are 24 assignments. If you do them all on time, if you get them done before class, then you'll get 2 points for each one, for a total of 24 out of 24 points. If you do them late, but still complete them, then you'll get 1 point for completing it, which will take away from the possible 24 points that you can earn overall. And then if you don't complete or if you don't complete one of them at all, then you don't get the points for that particular assignment. I think the way that it works, and some of you have been working with these already, I hope, but it starts off with a question and then just a blank space for you to type in an answer. That's not, as far as the way that the concept coach was working, that's not assessing you on your ability to answer the question. It only is sort of scoring you on your multiple choice stuff. But it gives you a place to type in an answer just to get you working your brain about what the question is and putting your thoughts down on what it is, what the possible answer could be. And then it shows you the multiple choice answers, and it'll help you, that process should help you answer the question correctly, or it might take you a couple of times. I really don't understand entirely how it works. I haven't used it a whole lot myself. This kind of thing should be, ideally what I'd like to see is you get the question, you get a chance to answer it. If you get it wrong, you get some feedback maybe about why your answer choice might have been wrong, and you get another chance to answer, something like that. I don't know if that's exactly how it works, but I have seen in the feedback I get from the system that, so is that?
Only one shot.
You only get one shot?
Mhm.
Okay, then this really doesn't make sense. In the feedback that I get to see, it shows 2 different sets of responses, or not responses, but scores. So like your first run through and then the second run through or something. I don't quite, so I don't understand exactly how it works, but it's a pilot program, we're trying it out. If nothing else, it gives you a chance to go through the questions at the end of each section for comprehension. If you don't get the questions correct when you're doing it, you're still going to eventually see the correct answer. You're not being scored on whether you got the questions right or not, just that you completed the questions. None of the concept coach stuff is for that. Then the other thing that you should do before you come into class is to go through the online content. Now there's a little quirk in this particular folder, which I noticed yesterday when I was showing it to there should be a folder that says whatever the topic is in online content, you go in there to get to that stuff. For whatever reason, I made that folder in here, but I didn't put the content. The content is actually this link right here. I just need to move it in there. Which actually I can do right now. It's like seeing behind the curtain. It's so exciting, isn't it? If I don't do it now, I'll forget to do it. Okay, so now that thing that said autonomic system Prezi is gone from this page because I've now moved it into this folder here. So go into that folder, there'll be content, and you'll want to do it there. The reason it wasn't in that folder is last semester when I set all this stuff up, I originally started with making one big presentation, which is kind of like lecture that you would have in class. I think it was the endocrine system, which is next week's topic. I started breaking it up into smaller pieces. So starting with next week's folder on down, as I was making them last semester, I had a folder and put all like 5 or 6 different things in there. And it's just that the autonomic system, I made that before I started doing that last week, and last semester, and I never put it in, but you'll find that. So that's what you need to do beforehand. Read the chapter, complete the concept coach material, and watch the online content. This course, you guys in this class right here, is sort of unique for me. All of the other classes that I teach in the hybrid format, which is I just see everybody once a week, which is basically the lab meeting. It's longer than a lab meeting. Like you guys, when you have lab, it's 1 hour and 50 minutes. When they meet, it's 3 hours and 20 minutes, which is actually the equivalent of a lab meeting and 1 lecture that you guys have. You guys have lab and 2 lectures for the week, so I see you more often. And it's separated out a little bit more into a traditional lecture meeting like we have in this room today and Thursday, and the lab meeting that we have in the lab room on whichever day you happen to be scheduled for that. My other classes set up in this hybrid fashion, and what I have here is meant to give them the sort of full lecture material that they can get to, but they can watch it whenever they want to. I'm not going to have all of that stuff prepared for those students and not make it available to you. So you have that too, and it'll also help you if you look at that stuff beforehand. What I'm going to do, because this is the more traditional lecture format of the class, we will still have these normal lecture type meetings, and we'll do what I've always done in my classes for the most part. Now there's going to be some redundancy if you're watching that stuff online. So what I also want to do is to push a little bit further. There are some things that I don't think I need to go into belabor in person in class, so we can move on and get more in-depth understanding of what's going on and what I do cover in lecture here. So that's what you want to do before you come in. So hopefully people did that before you came tonight, today. I'm hopeful, but I'm working on the assumption that you didn't quite know what to do just yet. And so I'll work on the assumption that you've done that definitely from here on out for the rest of the semester. But if you didn't get to it, don't freak out. It's not a big deal right now. Then after class, and for you guys, that basically means after a week's lecture meetings, 2 lecture meetings. Most of these topics will be covered week by week. Then after we finish that material, you'll have these 4 assignments. Oh, let me do this. When you go into one of these folders, you'll just see whatever part 1 assignment, but there are in fact 4 assignments. You don't see the other ones when you first go in here because you don't get to do part 2 until you complete part 1. You don't get to do part 3 until you finish part 2, and part 4 after part 3. So you'll just see this one here, complete that, and when you've done it satisfactorily, you'll see the link. It'll pop up here. It's hidden now the way that I got the screen set up. But you'll see the different assignments pop up when you're ready to go on to the next one. You have to complete, in this case, part 1 to go on to part 2 to at least an 80% score. It's a 10-question multiple choice quiz. It's basically a reading quiz. If you've done the reading, you can do that. And if you get 8 out of the 10 correct or better, then part 2 will pop up and you can go on. If when you do it, you get less than 8 correct, if you get 6 correct or something like that, then it won't let you go on to part 2. So you obviously need to do it again to get up to a score to move on. You have unlimited attempts on part 1, 2, and 3 assignments because they, you have to pass them to 80% to go on the next one. So you can do them as many times as you want to, or as you need to. The thing is that each attempt you make is averaged in with other attempts that you've made. So a second ago I explained, let's say you got 6 out of 10 correct on the first go through. That's obviously not going to let you go on, so you have to do it again. You do it the second time and you get 8 out of 10 correct on that attempt. But that does not mean you get to go on, because between the 2 attempts, what is your score? Not exactly. Right, so you got 6 out of 10, and then you got 8 out of 10. The average of that is 7 out of 10. Okay. 8 plus 6 divided by 20. Okay. So you have to do it again. Okay. Now, when you do it again, let's say you get another 8. What's the average there? 75%, yes. So 6 plus 8 plus 8 divided by 30 is going to be 7.5 out of 10. So obviously, you're not ready to go on. You have to keep going. So you have to keep doing attempts until you get it up to an average that's 80%. Okay. Which means it gets a little bit tougher with each attempt to get there. Now, let's say you, instead of getting 8 on the 3rd attempt, you got 10. Okay. So then we've got 24 divided by 30, which I'm pretty sure is 80%. I haven't done the math in a while, but I think that it comes out to 80%. So the better scores you get, the easier it's going to be to move on. Okay. The part 1 and 2 assignments are multiple choice. They're drawing from a larger pool than 10 questions. So each attempt you make will not be the exact same questions. There's only 20 or 30 questions in a pool. So you'll see the same questions come back through as it cycles. You just randomly get 10 out of the whole pool. So this first attempt, you might have gotten 10 questions, and the second attempt, you might have gotten 3 of those repeated and then 7 completely new questions. And then this next one, you might have gotten 9 questions that you've seen before and 1 new question. Okay. It'll just keep pulling new questions out of all that. Yeah.
Okay, so when you have, you're doing all this online, when you have an issue, like your internet connection gets severed or whatever, and it kicks you out at a 0,
right?
How does that get addressed?
Just tell me. When I go in and look at an attempt you've made, there's a button I have that's, I can't remember what it's called. It's a data log of your attempt. And when people get kicked off, for some reason, Blackboard's really sensitive about internet connections. And most websites, you lose internet for 30 seconds while you're reading something. It comes back on. The website doesn't even pretend that anything happened. But with Blackboard, it's really touchy. So when that happens, the data log will look really weird to me. Okay. So if I look on the data log, and what it does is it tells me when questions are saved. So if I see that questions are getting saved over the course of the time it says that you took it, then I know that you never lost internet connection. But I was dealing with one yesterday that the internet connection was lost, and it said no questions saved over 30 seconds or something like that. And that was the only data it had. So obviously no attempt data ever got logged. So that's obviously that was obviously dropped. But when there's attempt data there, and it's saved the questions, then it's done what it's supposed to do. And if there's some other problem, it's beyond Blackboard or my control.
Another question.
Okay.
So if you proceed on to part 2, 3, and like, you get a little further, but you want to go back for extra credit, and just by some weird chance you were to go down on that one, on one of them, would it affect the other parts?
Not exactly, and I know exactly what you're asking. It's a little weird, so let me fully explain it. If you've done part 1 to the 80% level and you got on to do part 2 and successfully complete that, you got on to do part 3, but you're like, well, I have 80% on part 1. I'd rather try to bring that up. You're welcome to go back and do that. If you do it, it was 80% and you get a 6 out of 10, and that's going to pull it down below 80%. The link to part 2 will disappear from this page, but the work you did on part 2 does not disappear. Just removes your ability to do that, to go back into that. If you want to go back and redo things to bring scores up, always do it in reverse order. So you go in and do part 3. If that changes a score, it'll hide part 4, which we'll assume by that time you've done part 4. But it won't affect parts 1 and 2. So work backwards if you're going to go back and redo work, because then you won't lose any links. But if you do lose any links, I just have to go in there and check off they work. It'll be fine. You gotta wait for me to check it off. It doesn't erase any work that you've already done. Don't worry about that. Okay. So parts 1 and 2 are multiple choice questions. They're pulling from a larger pool. Being multiple choice on what is effectively a take-home open book test, it has a time limit. All of the timers, which are just on multiple choice tests, are based on 2 minutes per question, which is more than enough time to complete a test, but that is a timer. When the timer runs out, it won't kick you out of the assignment. It'll say the timer's expired, would you like to continue, or something like that. I don't know what the actual dialog box says. And so you can continue on after. If you have a question or two that you need to finish up, go ahead and do that. If you consistently take too long, if you go to 27 or 34 or whatever minutes regularly on 20-minute timer assignments, I'll have an issue with that. I might just erase that data and you don't get credit for it. Honestly, I've not run into that before, so I don't know what consequence I'll impose, but I do not want you going way over the time limit, but a minute or two is not a big deal. Okay. There is an exception. There's one assignment at the end of the semester that the timer works a little bit differently, and I'll tell you about that in the beginning. So that's in May. Yes.
So for last week, we're supposed to do sensory and then proceed on to the autonomic. At the bottom of it, it said lab and ear quiz.
Right. So I'll talk about last week specifically after I explain things generally. Okay. So hold that question. I'll probably answer it before I'm done. Don't worry. Okay. Those 4 parts that you have to do. Oh, I was saying parts 1 and 2, multiple choice, timer, et cetera, et cetera. Parts 3 and 4 are not multiple choice questions. Okay. Part 3 is fill in the blank questions. There's no timer. There are 5 questions that are worth 4 points apiece. They might have multiple blanks, which count for partial credit. So if you get 1 blank out of 2 in a question, then you get 2 points. You have unlimited attempts to complete that because you need to get 80%, which is 16 out of 20 points, average across all your attempts. For most of the chapters, it'll be the exact same 5 questions over and over again. There are a few chapters here and there, and actually I can't think offhand which one it is, but I've written a couple of extra questions. And I think in AP1, wasn't it in nervous tissue or system? Yeah. So sometimes I've written a couple of extra questions. So you might get 1 or 2 new questions occasionally, but if you're doing several attempts, you'll see all the questions. And you need to go on to do part 4. Now, part 4 is open-ended questions, which means I have to grade them manually. All of these others are graded automatically. So you only get 1 attempt on the part 4 just because it's not feasible for me to be grading hundreds and hundreds of attempts on an assignment. If I'm doing that, I'll have no time to do anything else. So you get 1 attempt on part 4. Also, you're pretty much guaranteed to have these done to 80% because that's the requirement. And the part 4 is sort of where we can separate out the people that are getting what's going on in class, the people that aren't. Okay? If you're doing well in class, you're doing really well on these things. And if you're really struggling on the part 4s, that's probably a hint that you're not getting the information in the class very well. Okay. Each chapter is set up with these types of assignments. This is what passes for testing in the class. We don't have any special tests in the class outside of the lab exams and the final exam, none of which are coming up anytime soon. But every chapter is set up like this. It's essentially The testing I used to do in the old fashioned, one big test over 3 or 4 chapters. I've broken it up into little bits. The part 1 and 2 questions are more like the reading quizzes that I used to give. And then the 3 and 4 across several chapters is the bulk of the tests that I used to give. Just broken up this way to complete. Also in the folder for any given week, you'll see lab material and you'll see a makeup assignment. The lab quiz is all we see of lab material here, is another assignment to complete. All of these assignments are due before our next class meeting. And if you look closely at the due date, you'll notice that it actually says by 11:59 p.m. the day before class. So all of your due dates will be set up that way. Pay a little bit of attention in this setup with the 2 lectures. It's a little weird, depending on exactly when we finish topics. Usually topics will go for a week, and so things will be due by Monday night at midnight. But because of holidays and other issues, sometimes we'll finish a topic on a Tuesday, and so the due date will be Wednesday at midnight. You'll probably be able to start working on this stuff while we're in the midst of doing things. You can do the part 1 and 2 pretty much as soon as you finish the reading. And part 3 and 4 you can be working on as we're going through stuff. If you do the part 3, a lot of that should be covered in the online content reading, but you might want to wait through what we do in class to be more confident about your material. So these things might have to come at the last minute, but you can be working on stuff for the most part while we're doing it. The lab quiz is also due. Oh, that's right. I started to say this to the lab group yesterday, but I want everybody to understand it. There's a little quirk this semester because we have a new Blackboard administrator on campus who just started, and either she does not want to do what I asked, or she didn't quite understand what I was asking. I really should split you up as far as Blackboard's concerned into 2 groups, the Monday lab group and the Wednesday lab group, because due dates are universal within a Blackboard shell, of course. So right now, all of the lab due dates are set with the other assignments in that folder. Okay. What it really should be is that the lab quiz is set to be due before you have lab, but I can't do that for half of you in Blackboard and not the others. For whatever reason, whether she wasn't willing to or she didn't understand what I was asking, she didn't set up 2 Blackboard shells. So everybody's in the same shell, everybody gets the exact same due dates. For the lab quizzes, the due dates are going to be a lot like the other stuff in each folder, but really what it should be is that the lab quizzes should be completed before your next lab. Okay. So yesterday in lab, we were doing autonomics, so the Monday people should have that done by Sunday night, and then Wednesday we'll be doing this same topic, and the Wednesday lab group should have it done by next Tuesday. Won't say that in the due date, but keep that in mind. Yeah.
So, as you said, that lab quiz stated that it was supposed to be done yesterday. And so if I didn't, what I did was I just went back and looked at previous information from AMP1 and just used that.
Okay.
But I didn't have any information based on what I read to answer those questions. So if I had answered it and I didn't get a good grade.
You're welcome to send me a message and ask to reset that for you. If you did that because you're just finding out how it's working now, it's an annoying little quirk in how Blackboard's being administrated. So the best we can do is if you took it and you didn't do well because you didn't understand what the questions are about, just tell me and I'll erase the work you did and you can start over.
But where do I get the information from?
From lab tomorrow.
Oh.
Yeah. So it'll be fine. Yeah.
Do those, like what parts 1, 2, 3, 4, do those go with that point thing you're talking about, or is it just the other?
Point things.
How you get 1 point?
Oh, no. That's about the concept coaches in the reading.
So if it goes past the due date, we still can do it, right?
Right. So the only thing that's date dependent as far as the score is concerned is the concept coaches.
But everything else, while they have due dates, if you can't complete it by the due date, it's not gonna affect your score. Now, I do that because real life gets in the way of college a lot, and people just have to deal with things. They might not be able to get everything done by midnight. Some people are just, sort of people that rather do it at 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever. If you're the person that likes to do things at 3 o'clock in the morning, then do it at 3 o'clock in the morning the day before. Don't do it 3 o'clock in the morning before class. That just makes more sense. But whatever it might be, your needs. The due dates are more suggestions than anything else. Now, by saying that, I'm not saying that you should go, I don't feel like doing it, I'm gonna do it some other time. The due dates are there to keep everybody on track. If you're doing things by when they're due, you're going to stay on top of the course. If you say, I don't feel like doing anything this week, I'm gonna do it, next month. Next month, we're gonna be talking about something completely different, and your brain's not gonna be able to switch gears and go back to what we covered now. It's best to keep on top of the material when you do. But the due dates are a little bit fluid in that sense, that if you can't get it done exactly when it says it needs to be done, you can do it late and it won't affect your score. The one consequence will be to go from part 1 to part 2, Blackboard has to know what score you got on part 1. And if you do things late, the scores are not released within the system. Sounds strange, just pretend that it's a big room and there's a guy over there that has your quiz score and there's a guy over there that needs to know what it is to let you go on to part 2. Okay. If you do it late, the guy over there is not going to tell the guy over there what you got, let you go on. Until I say, okay, it's fine, pass on the score. So if you do this late, you won't get to go on to part 2 until I check off your late submission on part 1. It won't affect the grade, it'll just hang you up and we'll go to part 2. And then, since you already did part 1 late, that means you're doing part 2 late. When you do that late, it won't let you go into part 3 until I check it off. Okay.
So what if this is what I really did. Last night I only got to complete part 1 and 2, and I tried 3 and I didn't get the 16 out of 20. So do I still have to wait for?
So this morning when I came into my office, I went on Blackboard and checked off everything.
Awesome.
So if you did it before 9 o'clock this morning and you were waiting, then now you're gonna be able to do it. If you're waiting on something, feel free to contact me and let me know. I'll try to get to it as soon as I can, but I have, new responsibilities in my life and I can't necessarily get to it immediately. Yes.
So how should we prepare or take notes for the final? Should we go off the quizzes or the weekly bullet points that you have up on top?
I don't really have a set answer for that because everybody's different in the way that they want to.
The weekly
Yeah,
bullet
the way
points
that
for
you
each
wanna-
week?
The
It's
bullet
just the
points are
top.
kind of a
Yeah.
guide to what the week's about. It's a very broad guide.
Okay.
I would suggest that you are a little bit more particular about the information you record in notes and that sort of thing. If you need some help understanding how to take effective notes, there are people over in Building 27 that are great for helping with that. As far as the final exams actually concerned, final exam is basically these questions over and over again. So when you're studying for the final exam, you can go back to these assignments after you've done it.
Those specific questions or just
Right,
the
it just-
actual content?
Like I was saying, these are pools of questions.
Uh-huh.
For the final exam, I just take those pools all over again. It builds a new assignment out of those pools.
Okay.
But I'll explain that when we get closer to it. So again, lab quiz due dates in here will not exactly be correct. But with any due date, you can do anything late and it's not going to affect your score. The lab quizzes do not affect any other assignments like the part 1, 2, 3 things. So if you do this late, it's just late. It's no big deal. And that's just something we have to deal with because of the quirk and how Blackboard is being administered this semester. And then the last thing we see here is a makeup assignment. If you are late or absent to class, you'll be required to complete these assignments. So everybody's here today. Everybody was on time. So none of you will be required to do this assignment. You are welcome to go in and do the assignment if you'd like to, but the fact that you're not required to do it means that it will not be factored into your grade. I have to manually go in and check off who's exempt from the things so that it doesn't calculate in your score, which I'm kind of really bad about doing in a timely fashion, but I will get it done. If you're ever unsure about whether you're supposed to do something or not, the first thing you should do is go into My Grades, and that'll list the assignments you have to do, and the ones that you're exempt from will have a little gray circle next to it. You hold the mouse over the gray circle, you'll see the word exempt pop up. You do not see the gray circle and you're still not sure whether you're supposed to do it or not, please ask me directly. It might be that I forgot to put the exemption in. If you're not here for a particular class, then obviously you're going to be required to make an exempt. If you're late, I will not ever tell students how late is too late. Because if I do that, people are going to start trying to split hairs. If I say, well, 5 minutes late is too late, and that's when you get to do it, then people are going to start walking in 4 minutes and 59 seconds and arguing because they're a second before the cutoff date. So I do not say when late counts. Just as I'm taking attendance, I will decide for each particular day when I feel that people are starting to walk in late, and I'll mark them as late. If you want to avoid that, don't be late at all. Be here on time. But if you are ever unsure, if you come in late on a day and you want to say, did you mark me as late? I'll let you know. But I'm not going to say what the official cutoff is. Because actually there's not an official cutoff. It's just when I feel like marking people late. So those makeup signs. You're welcome to do those. They're open and available for everybody to look at. You might want to do it just for a different perspective on the material to review stuff. They're they're usually YouTube videos, things that I have not made, but things that are available online for the most part freely. Followed by fill in the blank sentences that I basically pulled right out of the video. As I was doing those, I just watched the video, and when the person on the video said something I liked, I wrote that sentence down, put it in, took the keyword out, and asked you to put the word in. So you're welcome to do these if you want to. If you're exempt from them, they just won't count towards your grade. If you go, well, if I do it, I want some compensation for it. Please make it available to be part of my grade. I will not do that. Every semester I go through, because there are people that do these when they're exempt from them, and I go on in and unexempt them, see what effect it has on their grade, and then re-exempt them. So the policy still stands. Every time I've done that, just because it's adding in another assignment and changing the whole dynamics of how things are scored, it brings people's grades down. Not enough to change the letter grade at the end, but a point or two will drop just because there's more math going on figuring out their score. So there's no benefit to have this added to your score, and I will not give you extra credit. The benefit of doing them if you're not required to is simply the chance for you to see the material and be assessed on how well you understand it in a different way. Yes?
The concept questions, where do the points get like added in?
I haven't quite decided. I think what I'm going to do is at the end of the grade book, which you guys don't see it in grade book fashion, you just see all the things listed, but I have columns in a grade book. The very last column in the grade book is extra credit. I'll probably put a column right before that, which is concept coach. So it'll just be an overall score out of 24 for the whole semester. When I did this before in a different format, I had each individual one had its own, and that got really messy in my grade book. So I'll probably just have one concept coach thing in there, which I'll have to sort of be adding points to as the semester goes on or something like that. Again, it's a pilot program. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do it.
Okay.
Oh, and another thing while I'm mentioning that, again, because it's a pilot program, I'm not quite sure what it's going to tell me about when you complete the work on there. If it gives me a very definite timestamp, like you've done it by 10:59 a.m. on a Tuesday or something like that. Or if it's just going to say you've done it on Tuesday versus Monday. Okay. If it gives me a very definite timestamp, I'll probably just count when class starts as the cutoff. But if it only gives me a calendar day, then I won't know if you did it before or after class on Tuesday, so I'll require it to be done by Monday. I don't know offhand how that works yet. I haven't looked at it since people started doing the assignments. When I've gotten a chance to look at it, I'll give you feedback. But for now, well, actually for now, since I'm just sort of telling you about all this, I will not start giving people points off for doing it late until next week. So all of the past concept coach stuff, if you haven't done them, get that done this week, and you get credit for it. So that's generally how everything works. I did say I want to go back and talk about last week a little bit, because it ended up being sort of a full distance week for you guys. Actually, this material is pretty much always a full distance component of any of my courses, even my traditional, well, I shouldn't say that. Sometimes I get around to talking about it in lecture with you guys, but generally speaking, the time set aside in the syllabus, the schedule for this material, is the time that I spend talking about how the class works, which is apparently what I'm doing today. Well, no, I'll probably be able to get started on the material for today and like that. But so I usually don't really cover any of this stuff in class anyways. So you have the reading, you have the online material there, which is essentially the lecture that I don't get a chance to do during the week anyways. So you have all that stuff there to go through this material, and then you have the part 1, 2, 3, 4 assignments. Then there's a lab quiz. I have not done the E&I lab material in my labs for like 3 years. It's insanely boring to me because it's strictly anatomy. This is the eye. This is what the eye looks like. This is the ear. This is what the ear looks like. What I enjoy about that stuff isn't really what this course is supposed to be about. I really enjoy how vision works and how hearing works, how we localize sounds. And in fact, when I was in graduate school, I first worked in a lab that was studying the development of hearing. So I'm very familiar with how all that stuff works. And I really can't cover it in this class because it's not what the class is meant to cover. And it would, while it might be very interesting, it would just get away from what the point of that is. So I haven't actually covered the material in this lab in years. What I used to do is just to tell the students, okay, read the book and you'll figure out the answers there. Now, because there's a makeup assignment that has some YouTube videos about this, there's one video about the eye and one video about the ear in this makeup assignment. If you were here last week, oh, never mind. Nobody's going to be required to do this makeup assignment because I don't have attendance data from last week. The person that decided on the class didn't tell me who was here. My other classes that were covered, I got attendance data for it, but I didn't even think to tell her to make sure I got that. So nobody's going to have to worry about that because I don't have any attendance data. But you are welcome to go in and do it if you want to. And I would strongly suggest whether you do the assignment or not, watch those videos because they're essentially what the lab quiz is about also. So, for last week. So there's reading with concept coaches to do. You'll want to complete the reading and watch the online content to be able to answer the questions in the part 1, 2, 3, and 4 assignments from last week. And then the lab quiz is over stuff that technically I would have done anyways, and I would have directed you to watch the videos in the makeup assignment for that anyways. Nobody's going to be required to do the makeup assignment because I wasn't here last week and I don't have attendance data for you guys. So you don't have to do it, but you want to watch the videos. Yeah.
Is that the usual case that the video would pertain to the lab quiz?
Not necessarily. It just happens to be for that one because I wanted something for the lab quiz because I never covered it in class on the first week. More often, the point of the makeup assignment is to sort of touch on the lecture topics that people would be missing. Oftentimes the topics overlap. It just happens to be this particular makeup assignment is directly about what the lab was on. So, but yeah, those videos that are in there can be helpful additions to the material if you're present and you're not required to do that, you're still welcome to go in and watch those videos or whatever. So it's fine. One other thing about makeup assignments. Like I said, the way this course works is different from the rest of the courses I teach. Those are very easy. The students have to come in on a particular one day of the week. So whether they are present or absent or late or whatever, they have the makeup assignment to do. For you guys, the makeup assignments are only going to be based on lecture attendance. I haven't set it up to be for lab stuff, which is not to say that you shouldn't come to lab or that you get away with not coming to lab. But the attendance that I'm looking at for the makeup assignments is solely based on your attendance for the lecture component in this room. The easiest way for me to deal with that for this course.
Could you repeat that? 'Cause that was right.
So just for all of the makeup assignments, it's if you're late or absent for class, all of my other classes, they just have class once a week. But you guys, we see each other 3 times a week. The attendance the makeup assignment's based on is just the lecture, this room thing, this whatever we do in this room. If you miss a lab meeting, that won't necessarily mean that you have to do the makeup assignment. So, but that doesn't mean blow off lab. Okay, I just don't have a mechanism for the same way that this works for the lecture stuff. And I thought something. Oh, but if you can't make it to lab, there of course is another lab doing the exact same thing. If you're in the Monday lab group and you can't make it, you can come to Wednesday. If you're in the Wednesday lab group, if you on Wednesday something comes up and you can't make it to lab on Wednesday, then you're kind of out of luck because Monday's already transpired. Okay, but if you know you're not going to be here on Wednesday, then you can plan ahead and come on Monday and get credit for being in lab, even though you have some conflict on Wednesday, if you're in the Wednesday group.
What time is Monday lab?
Same time, same place, same room. Same place and same room, I guess, are the same thing, but yeah. Exact same thing, just Monday versus Wednesday. Okay. Yes?
For the sensory chapter there, Ear and Eye quiz, we already did it not knowing that makeup assignment material applied to it.
Yeah, again, if you didn't do well and you feel you need to start over, let me know. The lab quizzes, I did this. You get 3 attempts on lab quizzes. So if you did it once and didn't do very well, if on principle you feel that I should just reset it, feel free on that. Let me know.
If you do it 3 times, would it average?
No, it's the last attempt.
Okay.
So if I ever get around to writing pools of lab quiz questions, then yes, it'll be like the other things. But the 10 questions that you get on lab quiz, you get over and over again every time. It's not a pool type assignment.
Yeah, I think what kind of confused me was because I was reading the autonomic chapter last night, and there's a few questions in that quiz from last week that the information was in the reading for. I don't know if that's just how it happened, or
That's
maybe
just
overlap or something, but.
that's the nature of the material in this course. Everything's kind of interconnected. So,
For last week's reading concept coach, are we only supposed to do 14.1?
oh, yeah, that's a good point. Feel free to do the whole thing, but the sensory perception, I think, is the name of that section. It's the only thing that we're really covering. So if you only do the first concept coach, that's fine. If you do all the concept coaches, that's fine too. Other questions? Okay. A couple of other things I want to be sure everybody's aware of. First off, don't cheat. Okay. Now that might seem like a kind of offhand thing to say, but I'm very serious about this. In this class, because most of what you're doing is online, it might be very tempting for you to just copy and paste stuff in from some other source, whether it be our textbook or Wikipedia page or patient information website or whatever, Yahoo Answers or something like that. I do pay attention to what you've submitted, and this really only applies to open-ended questions like the part 4 stuff. I can't really get you on plagiarizing the one word that you put in a blank for a fill in blank thing, but for anything that you're writing a significant amount, meaning more than a couple of words for, I pay attention to what you've written, and If I don't think it's something that a student in one of my classes would have written, like using terminology that we've not learned or I don't use on a regular basis, something like that, it's a red flag. And I'll just do a quick search to see where it came from. So just to show you the mechanics of that, if you wrote something, I can highlight it really quickly, and a right click on the highlighted text gives me the option to search Google for that text, and it just gives me that. This projector is really horrible. So you can't quite see this, but you can see the title here. In the little blurb of text underneath this search result, it has the word assignments is bold-faced. The words you have are bold-faced. The word will, answered correctly, parts, the number 2, the number 10. All of those are bold-faced, meaning that they are part of the text that I searched for. Okay. If when I do this, I get a blurb underneath the search result that is verbatim what I searched for, that tells me that you didn't write it. Okay. So it's very easy for me to tell when people have plagiarized. But if I pull something up and a bunch of words are bold-faced, but they're not in the same order, and there's breaks between it, so it's like pulling parts from different, I know that it might have used the same words that are in that, but you've written it yourself. Okay. This morning, I was going through assignments. There were a couple of people that had submitted makeup assignment stuff. And they have an open-ended question at the end of the makeup assignment. One of them kind of jumped out at me because keywords were highlighted in the text that the person put in. Okay. Students don't do that. Okay. When you're typing something, you don't take one word and make it bold-faced so it stands out from everything else. Okay. That's how textbooks are written, which means I knew that was something copied out of the textbook. I just highlighted it and did a quick search, and guess what came up? A link to our textbook. So somebody had just copied what was in the textbook and put it in the answer. That is so not allowed. Okay. In the syllabus, it explains somewhere, I can't remember which section, about making sure to write your answers in your own words. I used to do this exercise at the beginning of the semester, and I really need to go back to doing it, which is I would give everybody a paragraph from a Wikipedia page or the textbook or something like that, and I would ask you to rewrite it in your own words, as if you'd looked up information to answer a question, you found that as the answer to a question, and I wanted you to rewrite it so that you could show me that you can understand what you're reading and writing it in your own words. I don't do that anymore, and I really ought to, because I had a few problems with that last semester. But understand that I expect that anything that you submit as answers to me is written in your own words. I do not accept answers that have citations. Okay, you can't say Wikipedia page, whatever, and then put quotes around something. That's not allowed. Okay. All of the work that I'm asking you to answer about is common knowledge. So you should be able to find plenty of sources that all say the same thing. And then you can aggregate that information and respond using your own words to explain it. Okay. Am I ever going to ask you a question about how many legs the human body has and expect you to cite that information? That's common knowledge, right? Everything that this class is about is common knowledge as far as that's concerned. You do not need to cite any references. If you do cite references in your work and quote other people, I will not count that as answer. If you do not cite things but copy and paste other people's work, that's plagiarism, which is not allowed. The consequences for plagiarism are the first time I see it happen, I let the dean of students know, and I let you know that I saw it, and you get a 0 on the assignment that plagiarized work was found in. Okay, so if it's a part 4 thing and you plagiarized one of the answers, you get 0 for all of the answers on that assignment. Okay. If I see you do it again, then I let the dean of students know that you did it the second time, and he removes you from the course. You do not get to complete the course. I'm not exactly sure the finer points of that, if you get a W on your transcript or what, but you're out of my class, that's not allowed. The easiest way to keep anything from happening is to just be sure that you write your answers in your own words. Do the research you need to do to answer the question, which might be reading the book or listening to what I have to say or paying attention to the sources that I provide for you. You might end up doing some online searching to get information, whatever it might be. Do that research, and with the information you found, then create your own answer. I'm grading on your ability to tell me what you understand, not your ability to copy and paste from some other source. So be sure that what you write is in your own words. Yeah.
Just a general question about common knowledge. How many people or how many sources would you consider common?
I say that explicitly in the syllabus. It's there. Trust me. I put it there because of that question. So, yes. Look a little harder for it, you'll find it. But, there's not a universal definition for what common knowledge is. So what I said counts in the syllabus is sort of what I've always worked with. So, so you can find it and you can find the answer to that question. Okay. Other questions? Whoops.
So the answer for part 4 would either be in the book or one of your prezzies, or
Sometimes I ask a question that goes beyond what the class has covered directly.
okay.
So, how many people have done Sensory Systems Part 4?
It's hard.
Welcome to A&P. Okay, so there's a question in there about the lateral line organ in fish. Okay. This is anatomy for humans. Okay, so I don't talk about lateral lines at all, but it's another example of the same sort of sensory system that we have in our body. And I'm just asking you to do a little research to learn about that so that you can answer a question comparing the lateral line organ of the fish to the corresponding sensory system in humans, which you've learned about in this class. So sometimes those questions will go a little bit further and ask you to synthesize information from the class and consider it in a new environment, whatever, yeah. So sometimes it asks you, so sometimes you will have to go online and do some research beyond the book and the other material that I've given you. And that's why I'm making sure to say, don't plagiarize that stuff. So, okay. Other questions? Okay. I think I covered everything that I wanted to. Oh, nope, there's one other thing, that's right. This is new. None of my students, actually I said this in the video, but I would just want to reinforce it. My attendance policy has always been, you're adults, you can decide what's most important in your life. Unfortunately, what I've seen is people start to decide that other things are more important and they stop coming to class. So I've put a new wrinkle into my attendance policy, which is if you are absent for more than 2, actually for you guys I should make it 3. For my once a week class, it's 2, but since I see you guys 3 times a week, I should expand that a bit more. But so let me think about it. For you guys, I'll change this number. But the way it's written right now is if you're absent for more than 2 classes in the first half of the semester, then you don't get to take the physical in-class portion of the lab exam on whatever day that's scheduled. And then starting over from after that lab practical to the end of the semester, if you miss 2 or whatever number I decide for you guys, class meetings, then you don't get to take that. Okay. I think 3 is still too small for you guys. I have to think about it. I'll come up with a good number for how many times I'll look the other way if you miss class. But if you miss too many classes in the first half of the semester, you don't get to take that first in-class lab practical. If you miss too many classes in the second half of the semester, you don't get to take that second in-class lab practical. There is an online component to the lab practical, so not getting to the in-class part doesn't mean you get a 0 on that test. It just means that you're going to be seriously compromised in getting a decent grade in lab. So you should stay on top of attendance. And then also for the whole semester, okay, and again, for you guys, because of
the number of times we actually meet, I gotta think about the number again. But the way it's stated for my once a week classes is if you miss if you miss more than 3 classes for the whole semester, you are not eligible for any last minute help. What I do at the end of the semester when I'm doing grades, if I find people have left assignments incomplete incomplete by the end of the semester, I'll open Blackboard up for them again and let them complete the work. But I'll no longer do that for people that are consistently absent from the class. And again, I gotta think about it for you guys. I gotta give you a different number than 2 per half semester or 3 for the whole semester. So let me think about that and I'll get back to you. But that is a consequence if you're missing a lot of classes. I had a student last semester who was present the whole first half of the semester, and then after the first practical decided that she didn't need to come anymore and missed the last 5 classes of the semester. I don't know if it's a matter of fatigue or whatever, people stop coming to class, but there is going to be that consequence that you have to have regular attendance for each half of the semester to take the corresponding lab quiz, so a lab test. So keep that in mind, and I'll remind people as we get closer to that. So I just want to state that emphatically so everybody's aware of it, but I think I actually did say it in the video that you watched last week. So, any other questions? Okay, so we got about 10 minutes. Let me actually say stuff that, okay, so we do have a question.
So as I was doing the assignments over the weekend,
Mhm.
I was texting you.
Okay.
And, sometimes I like to work late. I don't like to work too late, but I'll text you about 8:30, 9 o'clock.
Mhm.
And I wanted to know, I didn't want to feel like I was overdoing it with you.
Uh-huh.
So I didn't want you to feel like,
Okay.
he's texting me too much.
You're welcome to text as much as you'd like. While it might be annoying, I won't hold it against you, but you are not annoying, so don't worry about that. I've had students that are annoying, and I have a very different threshold, so don't worry about it. But officially, I don't answer texts after 9 o'clock. So if you text me after 9 o'clock, I can't guarantee that I'll text back. And in fact, I think I did text you a little bit, like 9:30, I might have sent the last response. And then you sent me something, and I didn't respond to that. I did, however, deal with the issue that text about. I just didn't text you back because it was the end of communication time for the day. But all of my devices have now been sent to silent, absolutely, because we don't want to wake the little guy up. So don't worry about texting to be a nuisance in any kind of like notification alarm kind of thing on my phone or whatever. Feel free. I'll just stop responding when it's too late. Officially, don't expect a reply after 9 o'clock, and then all day don't expect an immediate reply. I might have other things to do. You text me this afternoon at 3 o'clock, I'm not going to be able to respond until after I finish my afternoon class. So I do have other responsibilities going on. And sometimes my texting responses are limited by the looks that my wife gives me. So keep that in mind. But yeah, you don't worry about it being annoying. If you have questions, respond. You might text me, hopefully not, but if you text me like 5 times and I never get back to you, in the morning I'll respond and deal with things. If I get 5 texts to respond to, I'll probably email you back with a long response. But don't worry about being annoying. Go ahead and ask questions if you have questions. I'll get back when I can. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm not quite sure. Okay, first off, I'm not quite sure what you're going to be able to see on the screen too well, but we'll see. Yeah.
It's the other light right here.
Yeah, let me see. I don't think that's going to help because it looks like the gray text of the.
The brightness on that.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm not asking you to look at the text anyways, but I happen to be in the textbook because what I'm going to do is go to particular pictures. So
relatively visible. I think it's just the gray text in the textbook that doesn't come through very well. Some of my colleagues who also use this room to teach have indicated to I think we call it classroom technologies or whatever, the division of IT that's in charge of these things, that thing sucks. And they're either going to replace it or at least get a new bulb for it. I don't know what the plan is, but there's one guy that does all that work for classroom technologies, a part-time employee, and at the beginning of the semester, he's probably got a to-do list to choke a horse. So I don't know if it's going to get any better anytime soon, but it's supposed to. So I want to, I was going to say, what I have done in the past is to use the presentation software, which is actually the online content thing, and put that up and used it sort of like a PowerPoint presentation to go through material. It just feels really redundant to pull that up and show that stuff to you in class when you can just watch it online. So what I'm probably going to do is instead in class when I'm talking about stuff, I'm just going to pull up the textbook and pull up the occasional picture or table or whatever that's in the book to discuss things. Now, a lot of these pictures are in the presentation. I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about things and be sure that you're aware of what's going on. So in the presentation about the autonomic system, I start off with this whole thing about lions and savannas and being scared and running away. Please pay attention to that. It's a nice sort of setup for what the autonomic system is about. But what I want to do here, just in a little bit of time we have, I just want to jump in with a quick introduction about what it is. For the nervous system in general, it's separated into two major parts. There's the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. By my way of reckoning, I consider somatic nervous system to be the end of ANP1 and autonomic system to be the beginning of ANP2. It's not exactly how we do it here in our department, but I really see this material as being the start of ANP2. The autonomic system and then next week's topic, which is the endocrine system, both are about regulating homeostatic mechanisms in the body. And then the rest of the semester, we're going to be looking at the cardiovascular system and the respiratory system, digestive system, et cetera, et cetera. And for every system, we're going to be considering how it's regulated specifically by the autonomic system or the endocrine system. So here we're starting off the semester to look at this system and then the endocrine system to set up how we regulate homeostatic mechanisms so that we have that understanding when we get into each particular organ system that we're dealing with. The autonomic nervous system has two divisions. There's the sympathetic and the parasympathetic divisions. The picture that I've pulled up here is a representation for the sympathetic system, although the picture for the parasympathetic system is kind of very similar. Anatomically, when we're talking about the autonomic system, what we're concerned with is the output. Okay? The autonomic system is all based on reflexes. So hopefully in ANP1 you learned about reflexes like, well, you're probably familiar with the little rubber mallet on the knee to make your foreleg kick down. That's a reflex. There's a sensory input in and then a motor response out. For the knee-jerk reflex, the sensory is the mallet hitting the tendon that connects to the quadriceps. When that stretches out, that stretch sensor information goes into the spinal cord, which immediately tells the quadriceps to contract. It's just a stretch reflex, which is pretty common for most every muscle. When the muscle is stretched out, it reflexively contracts back, and that's why you kick your lower leg out. For the autonomic system, we have the same sort of thing. There's a sensory input and then a motor output. We're really mostly concerned with the motor output side of things. We'll vaguely talk about some of the sensory input when it's relevant, but we're going to be paying most attention to the output, which is what this picture is about. So here we have the brainstem and spinal cord. The output is represented by little dots, which is where a neuron would be located.
and then the line coming out of that would be the axon. For a stretch reflex like I just described for the knee jerk, you have a neuron in this ventral horn of the spinal cord that goes out and makes a neuromuscular junction with the quadriceps. That's all ANP1 material that you learned before. Here, it's a little bit more complex. There's actually 2 neurons in the output chain before we get to the target tissue. In these pictures, the first of those neurons is represented by the dot with a solid line extending away from it. That's what's known as the preganglionic neuron, or sometimes you'll hear reference to the preganglionic fiber, which is talking about the axon that's coming out of the spinal cord. Preganglionic means that it's before a ganglion. Out in the periphery, there's another neuron located in the ganglion that's the target of this first neuron. And that second neuron that's in the ganglion is represented here again by a little dot. And the line coming off of that is dotted or dashed. And that's the postganglionic fiber. I tend to say preganglionic fiber and postganglionic fiber, talking about the actual nerve fibers rather than the neurons, because the postganglionic neuron is located in a ganglion, which can be kind of confusing. Anatomically, the cell body's in the ganglion, okay? But you will see some sources refer to it as the postganglionic neuron, which makes it sound kind of confusing because it's in the ganglion, but its axon leaves the ganglion and goes to the target. There is an error in this picture, a slight error in this picture. First off, what's not really an error, as you're scanning up here, which might be kind of hard because the projector's not very bright, you see a dash line, dash line, dash line, dash line, dash line, solid line, dash line, dash line, dash line. And it might seem like that solid line is a mistake. Actually, it's not really a mistake. The target organ here is the adrenal gland, and the adrenal gland is sort of like a ganglion. So there's a solid line going to this because a preganglionic fiber goes to the adrenal gland. Everything else coming out of here is a dotted line or a dashed line for the most part, because those are postganglionic fibers. Now, the error in this picture actually is if you follow the solid line back, there's a dot in this ganglion. There should not be a dot in this ganglion. That solid line should continue all the way back, and the dot should be back here somewhere. A preganglionic neuron leaving the spinal cord contacts the adrenal gland. Everything else in this list, whether it's the iris or the lacrimal glands or the salivary glands or the heart or the et cetera, everything else has a dashed line going to it because it's getting contacted by a postganglionic fiber. So I just want to point out that little quirk there. In lab yesterday, I talked about, not with this picture, but with the wall-mounted model, the location of the sympathetic versus parasympathetic output origins. So Monday people, you heard that part. Wednesday people, I'll talk about that in lab tomorrow, which will basically pick up on this. I just wanted to, with this picture here, point out that little quirk that the adrenal gland gets a preganglionic fiber because it's sort of like its own sort of ganglion itself. And I'll pick up with that on Thursday to finish talking about what this figure means and how the system's set up, and we'll look at the parasympathetic and then a little bit about how it functions. So again, see Wednesday people in lab tomorrow and everybody on Thursday in here for a lecture.